Welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday. It's me, Brandy P, with the Yes, I Am the Veteran podcast. And today we are very truly honored to actually have Women's HERStory on our very humble podcast. And I will go ahead and introduce her now. And this is Miss May Krier. Hi, May. How are you doing?
Fine, Brandy. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody that's watching tonight?
Yes, I'm May Krier. I live in Levittown, Pennsylvania right now, but during the war years, and I worked in Boeing in Seattle, Washington. I'll be 97 years old in March, and I'm still going strong. I hope I can continue for a few more years because I've got a lot to say and do for the women and young girls of this country. I think it's outstanding what you've been doing and what you're doing now.
Well, I mean, ma'am, you're truly her story, and it was, we have our adventures, but I mean, it was you that we looked up to, as far as an icon, and it's amazing that we get the opportunity. I remember 2 years ago, I was a finalist for Miss Veteran America, and I really remember thinking about, wanting, to pay tribute to Rosie. I almost did the Rosie the Riveter dance. There's really a dance. Like, I didn't know that there was a song, and there's so much history behind what you do. I mean, quite literally, there's now a Rosie the Riveter Day, and it's I
I
heard
was
that you're
very
driving
interested
force.
in getting it.
Yes, ma'am.
Brandy, we opened doors. There were so many of us. Other women come walked in these footsteps before us, but they didn't have the numbers like we had during World War II. And when we opened the doors for you ladies, and I'll tell you, we handed you the ball, and we're just so proud of what the young women and young girls are doing. I just think it's outstanding. I love to see all of your careers and what you're capable of doing.
Well, for us, I mean, I think that it's amazing that you're watching what we're doing, and that really, I mean, you have a lot to say for women, and you're still doing quite a bit for women. What I thought was amazing is that your work ethic hasn't changed. You're still a very busy lady.
I am. It's rewarding. It's very rewarding because I get the most beautiful responses from people, and that's when it's equal. I mean, it's so nice when they realize what we've done and what they're doing now. I'm just so fascinated with what you women are doing. The doors weren't open for us at the time. Up until 1941, it was a man's world, and they never imagined that what women were capable of, and we certainly showed them what we're capable of. We're still showing them.
Well, I think it's absolutely amazing. What was a work week like during the height of World War II? So I asked some women, veterans or and advocates, to ask some questions, and so that was one of the questions that I was asked. Was what was a typical work week like for you?
Well, it was funny because we all grew up during the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, the stock market crash. We had nothing, absolutely nothing. And by 1930s, President Roosevelt started putting in good programs that was bringing us out of the Great Depression. But now, when World War II was declared, every man, woman, and child just dropped everything they were doing to protect our country, save our country. It wasn't my job or your job, it was our job. And there was none of this fighting or backbiting. We just did what had to be done. The men needed our equipment, and we made it for them. And that's why they tell us we couldn't have won the war without the women and what they did. One of the little stories I love to tell is Hitler said he wouldn't have any trouble defeating America because American women couldn't produce. He said we were soft and spoiled and spent too much time on cosmetics and stockings, frivolous things. I think we showed Hitler what American women were made of.
I heard that during World War II, the reason that the red lip became popular was because he hated the color red, and it was their way to like kiss off to Hitler, basically, as because of that comment. Is that true?
I don't know. I never heard that before. That's interesting. I do know that the Seattle newspaper, The Intelligencer, they told us, they said, they encouraged us to wear our makeup, our nail polish. They said, even though you're doing a man's job, we want you to remain feminine. And I thought that was nice. But well, I never heard that quote. That's interesting.
So they actually, when women Marines were enlisting, they originally were given a lipstick color, and it was called Montezuma Red.
And that's interesting. All the stories and things I've heard and known, heard of, that's a new one to me. For me, this is what I like. I not only they learn from me and I learn from them. No matter where I go, where we all come away with learning something from each other, and I think that's so important, especially when I go to schools. I love when I go to schools or to teachers. I speak to groups of teachers sometimes, and they're educated people, which I'm just lucky to get through school. And it's so interesting for me because we each have something to learn from each other. And that's so important to, like, we go back to listening. It's as important to listen as it is to talk. So,
Yes.
I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, while we're at it, I'm pretty excited today. So I got to test out my new microphone. So I'm pretty excited about this. Thank you so much to Rev Nation for sending me a microphone. I
And
almost
there's
threw my other one out the window for we had a famous guest,
a
Mark
new poet.
Hohenheim.
Well, this is new for me. I'm so pleased to be able to come on here because, like I said, I'm not the I learn a little each time as I come on, but I had never been asked to be on podcasts. And of course, I get very nervous when I have to learn something new. But it's simple once you do it. I mean, once you realize, well, you lead me through it without any problem. So,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we're honored to have you on. I never ever imagined in my wildest dreams I would have met a Rosie, much less interviewed her live.
there's a lot of us, still a lot of us, but many of them are, and disabled or, well, they're not aggressive like I was. I just felt that after World War II, I said the men came home to parades, flying flags, and Rosie came home with a pink slip. And it just wasn't fair that they didn't honor the women for what they did. And it was never like Washington, the monument down in Washington.
Mhm.
There's nothing there except a little plaque on the alcove of the memorial, and that angered me. They should have a Rosie statue in there. I mean, that's all we're asking for. And God knows, I know the people here in the Trenton area that make the Rosie statues. It's just a matter of, it's politics that goes through. You got to go through so much to just even get them to open the doors and listen to you. So I'm kind of getting at the end of the line because I fought hard for our first National Rosie Riveter Day, our National Women's Month, and of course our Congressional Gold Medal. I really worked for that. I spent a lot of time in Washington and letter writing. I never gave up. And I just think I'm just so proud of it. Just so proud that we achieved that. And of course, now with my face mask and bandana, going up, Boeing took them up to the International Space Station in May, and they put it on their mannequin, Rosie the Rocketeer, and that's who manned the capsule. And I'm
So
so proud of that.
how many so tell me about the masks. So I've heard a rumor that you make bandanas still. I
Yeah,
heard that.
well, when I traveled, I used to go to Washington quite often. The Air Force has been fabulous to me. And I used to go to Washington and I bring bandanas because I've always made the Rosie bandanas. And they would be so excited. Some of them would, I didn't have them for everybody, but most of them I tried to do special ones. And they'd ask me to sign them. Well, when the pandemic started, I just switched over to face masks and I started sending them to all the people who had helped us get these programs. And, like our congressmen or just everybody that helped us get these programs. And I think I'd made maybe 300. I was doing this all free. I wasn't charging. And the
Wow.
newspaper picked up on it, went viral. And I had 6 countries. You can't believe how many requests I had. And I had to stop at 5,000. And a lady in Phoenix that called me, and I'd met her before at the Freedom Foundation. She said, "Can I help you?" Her name is Deb Wilson. And I'll tell you, I worked that lady's fingers to the bones, and she was so smart. She set up an Honor Rosie program, and this is what helped us get the Congressional Gold Medal. Because she put on there, we worked to get everybody that hadn't signed on, or the women that we have like 6,000 followers on there.
Wow.
And the ones that the different representatives or congressmen who hadn't co-sponsored, we put their names up there. And the women who lived in those states went after them and didn't take no time. And all Senator Casey said to me, "How did you find and get all those numbers?" And I said, "There's something about a number, people. If you can get enough people behind you, you can get things done."
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly right. We
Yeah.
are our own best advocates. I believe that wholeheartedly. And I think that's amazing you did that. And honestly, I sewed like 5 masks maybe during COVID. So, I mean, like, to hand stitch a mask is not
Yeah,
easy.
Brandy, the nice thing that came of it, I got the most beautiful. I got boxes of letters from these people that asked requested the mass. The most beautiful letters. They tell me about their father, their mother, their grandfather. One lady was in the night within the towers on 9/11 when the plane came in, and she wrote me the most beautiful letter. She said she didn't think she was going to get out alive, and she's seen our poster with Rosie the Riveter, and she says I can do it. And I said, well, I just got the chills. And letters like that make you cry. Some make you laugh. And I've got boxes of these most beautiful letters. They're the American people. They're the genuine American people, not these radicals that climbed the Capitol building. I shouldn't say that that's the way I feel, because when we were young, we honored our parents, we honored our flag, we honored uh, our everything about our government. You know, the Capitol building is only material, but it was such a symbol for us. And that's very hard on older people who are raised that way.
So, like, did you face any obstacles when you were a Rosie? Because you were working very diligently during a time that it wasn't very like a welcoming climate for women to work in. Did you ever face any obstacles, like, or any sort of issues from like men or outside influences, or people asking questions about what you did?
Well, some of the ladies did. I know one case where the inspector was after this one woman all the time, and she was resisting him, I guess, because he used to. We couldn't smoke cigarettes, but they could chew, and he spit near her equipment. One day, he spit on her equipment, and she just refused to work until he cleaned it up, and we all stopped. We thought, well, she's going to get fired because that was a women's role. They didn't. They made him clean it up, and he never spit on anybody's equipment after that. But usually, it was a man's world at that time. They didn't pay much attention if a woman had a complaint. I never experienced that. I was lucky. I was a teenager. I would work all day and dance half the night. I was having a good time. It wasn't like the women that had to work for a living, or had people at home they had to go home and take care of. So I was pretty footloose and fancy free, as they used to say. And I loved that role. I loved Seattle. I loved the, the freedom that I had. And as far as working at Boeing, no, I never had any bad experience. I've had a couple really good ones. When we built the 5,000 plane, that was at Pearl Harbor, and that was May of 1944. We all got to paint our names on it. It was
Really?
$5,000, and you'll see pictures a lot of times with that B-17 that has all those names on it. And my name, and so is my sister's, our names are on that plane. That was nice. And then one day, Hap Arnold, he's a five-star general of Army Air. We had no Air Force yet. And he walked through, and we were off of the platform for some reason, or I guess they were moving the plane or the wing to connect it to the plane. And he stopped and talked to us. There's about maybe 6 or 7 of us. He talked to us and he shook our hands. And when he walked away, we just felt so proud of what we were doing. And when I go to Pentagon now, I've been invited to the Pentagon several times. And when I go there now and I tell them about shaking hands with Hap Arnold, well, they just really fascinated with that, because Hap Arnold's anywhere in the Pentagon, they got huge pictures of him. He was pretty famous.
Well, that's pretty amazing that you were really part of history. I mean, those are historical photos because I know exactly the plane you're talking about, like with all the signatures, because it's like right towards like the nose of it, right, where it's like on the side.
Well, have you seen the movie of Memphis Belle?
Yes, of
B-17.
course.
Well, that was made in Boeing, but before I went, that was made in 1942. I started in early 1943. Well, I was out in Ohio. I was invited out there to an affair, and they gave me red carpet treatment when they knew I was coming, and they just let me go where places with the Memphis Belle that the average person can't get in or get up to, and it was just beautiful. And they had at the different museums, that one and this one, they had different people asking me how we did it and showing me how they're doing it now. It was just really interesting because, those years of expanding those years, it's amazing how we've improved or pretty much stayed the same in a lot of ways. When we were in Normandy, there was a group. I was the only riveter. The rest of the other 4 girls were from shipyards. when we got to one of the reenactor groups, they had already set up a truck with a compressor on it. They wanted to see if I could still rivet. I didn't know they were planning that. And it was 70 some years, and I still had the knack. It was so funny because the piece I was riveting on, I turned and I said to the man, "Well, I know I can still rivet. What kind of a bucker are you?" And I turned it over. It was so funny because he was French and he didn't speak a word of English. But that was a nice experience.
That's pretty awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
So, on that note, so I may have made an error on time, so I'm gonna go ahead and really quickly introduce our guest host for tonight, Miss Cecilia Marie. So I'm gonna bring her on and have her introduce herself quickly. So she has come on our show before. She does work with Operation Tattooing Freedom, and she does tattoo veterans with PTSD. So she's pretty amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and add her to the stream now. And she does some amazing work for us in our podcast. And so she's made some pretty amazing shirts. So let me go ahead and add her now.
Hi. Sorry for the mix-up. I was running around all crazy trying to get all in here. But hi, I'm Cecilia Marie, and Brandy did a good job introducing me and a little bit of what I do. My brain's kind of all over the place, so you might have to direct me right now. But I'm so excited to meet you, May. I'm super excited.
I'm glad to meet you. Brandy's told me about you.
Yes, I would love to just sit with you in person, like over a cup of tea, and just like, I saw that you sew, and I love to sew as well.
Do you?
So yeah. Yes, I do. I think that would be really cool. Where are you located?
Where am I located?
Yes.
I'm about 10 miles east of Philadelphia. I'm right between Trenton, New Jersey and Philadelphia. I spent my working years in Trenton, New Jersey.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In fact, I've been invited to the Mint. I don't know when. That's where they're going to be minting our Congressional Gold Medal.
Oh,
and that's only like 10 miles from me. So
that's amazing.
Isn't it though? It experiences you. I never realized. I started 40 years ago to write, to get the women recognized, because I felt it was so unfair that they didn't recognize us after the war. And I just never give up. I just wrote and wrote. And finally, an editor of one of the newspapers picked up on my story. And I asked her, I said, why, after all these years, do you pick up on my story? She said, well, so much goes over our paths and over our desk every day. And your story just happened to be the one we needed for that particular occasion. And you just, so much in our life is luck or just fate. You just know where it's going. But and just since it's just snowballed, I've just had the most wonderful time. And, I just meet the most wonderful people. People
That's
say,
amazing.
That was a lieutenant general or something like that. And I said, you could have been a private. I don't look at their stripes. I look at people,
That's awesome.
I like people.
That's so great.
So Eugene asks, do you go to the Army Navy games, Miss May?
No, I never have. Well, that's usually held in Philadelphia, Army Navy. But no, I never have. Usually so crowded. And I just, especially as I got older, we used to go to the games a lot when I was younger, especially the Philadelphia, the baseball teams. We liked them. Games a lot when I was younger. But no, I never have been to the Army Navy.
Sorry.
Hi, Granny Lisa.
My husband was Navy, so naturally, he's what he likes.
Well, that doesn't mean you have to agree, though.
Yeah, there's always some, rivalry.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually. But so I was Army.
It was fun rivalry. It isn't like the politics today where there's so much hatred. This is what just bothers me so. The hatred in families, even families. And I just had a couple here yesterday. The woman was telling me her sister didn't speak to her for, I think she said, a year or 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
And we got along good. Now, this is so sad, really sad. But you don't know what each generation is going to bring.
Yeah, I was going to, go ahead, Brandy.
No, I was going to say is, so Cecilia's going to ask a question for you, if that's okay, Miss May.
I had a few questions for you. I was going to kind of touch base on that whole rivalry thing. What's funny is I come from a whole Navy family located here in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and then I went Army. And so there's always like,
Good thing I'm between you then.
Yeah. So it's just kind of funny. It's like, we're all together. What does that matter? And I actually, so that ad council commercial just aired earlier this week, and another person who's military made a comment about I guess my MOS, and saying like, oh, well, you're just whatever. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. We all serve together.
Thank you.
Whether or not, I was intel or you were infantry or, you were a riveter, like, doesn't matter. We're all on the same team. Why do we
That's
need to
right.
be so divided?
And we couldn't have done, we still can't do these things if we don't work together. And when you get that hatred in there, it's sad.
Yeah.
Because it's changed me in a lot of ways. They tell me not to talk politics, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's so hard not to comment or say things.
You
But
kind of have to when it's something you're passionate about, especially when
right.
it comes to women,
Well,
women's
especially when it
rights,
comes
and
to our
everything.
country, we know what a good country this is, and we know how good. Why don't they try to fix it instead of trying to tear it apart all the time? That's what I don't understand. They don't want to work together. It's so
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, that's very true. I don't know if you guys had answered some of the questions already from when you guys were chatting
Well,
before.
Brandy and I did a pretty good job of talking, don't we, Brandy?
Always.
I had some questions written down, but really, I was trying to. I read that you teach STEM classes now.
Do I teach? No, I'm invited to so many places.
Okay.
Like this week now, for instance, I was on a Zoom, and then I was on a radio program, and I was with a lady from writing a book. I was on. She wanted to make an interview, or appointment for an interview. And by the time we got done, we already did the interview because when you got the time and talk, when you're an easy talker, it's easy to do.
Yeah.
And, it's just like it's amazing. I go do a program in Valley Forge. This is of Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. It's a Valley Forge Freedom Foundation.
Yeah.
And every year, teachers come there from all over the country. It's an accredited course. They come for a week to study World War II.
Oh,
They
wow.
always invite me to come. And have you ever heard of Woody Williams, the Iwo Jima recipient of the Congressional Gold Medal? He just passed away about a couple months ago. Well, I've did a few programs with him there, and we just had the best time. And they like to learn. They like to see somebody who really did it, and talk to them. And it's a really nice thing. I like it really well. But that's one of the things I do. But one day I was on with the CEO of Boeing, David Calhoun. He's the big wig, our Senator Congressman uh, Casey, and our Congressman, our Senator Casey, and our Congressman Fitzpatrick. We had 8 schools and 100 students, and it was Engineering Week. And that was really interesting because right at the time, the astronauts or the space station was wanted women to get more involved. Well, you need an engineering degree for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was perfect to me to talk to the young girls to make them realize that just because he's a boy sitting next to you doesn't mean that he can do it better than you. You've got a brain same as his. Don't
Absolutely.
don't step back or don't sit back because you're a girl. Those days are gone. And I think after that was the same day that the CEO from Boeing said, "May stay on the air when we're done. I got a surprise for you." And that's when he told me they're going to take my mask and bandana into space. And I was
that's
so
so
thrilled
great.
over that.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
And you got to know that it might not have felt like it back then, but you're definitely inspiring a lot of women, a lot of generations right now. And then we're turning around and educating the younger ones too. Like my daughter's 18, my bonus daughter's 10. I'm training her like how to sew, how to do these things and be self-sufficient, because you can do anything you want to do and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise.
It's up to you.
That's what we got to do. And we're here to change the world. And on that, on that mindset,
Well, then the
anybody
girls
can do
tend to,
anything.
too, if they run into a problem, they quit. I said, no, whatever you do, because you're going to make more mistakes and you do good things and you learn more from your mistakes.
Yeah, can't be afraid of failure.
Don't let that stop you. Just keep going. I don't know where I got my drive or whatever, but my persistence, but I didn't let up. I'd let up for a while, then I'd get determined. I'd hear something, then I'd start writing again. And I'm just so proud because the Air Force has been just fabulous with me. They flew me to Salt Lake City and give me a Lifetime Achievement Award. They've invited me to St. Louis this year. And I can't tell you how many times I've been at Patrick's Air Force Base, where they took me to right up to see that launch with the heavy rocket. And they gave me a 3-hour private tour of Cape Canaveral. How could you ever get that if you're not out there? Things that I treasure. I really treasure.
That's amazing.
Hey, did you get permission to bust the tower when you were at Cape Canaveral? Like, because I know I would have definitely asked for a
What was
flyby.
that, Wendy?
Did you ask for a flyby? Because considering you got to take control of the tower for a few hours.
Oh, you mean what tower? You mean?
Oh, the aircraft, the air crew tower, like the actual control tower.
Oh, no, 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 I've never done nothing like that. But, you know, it took me 70-some years to get a ride on a B-17.
Dang.
It was so
Really?
funny because I built B-29s too, but I always had a love for B-17. I'm not sure why. One of the ladies that did my story, I've had so many now in the newspapers, but she called it my love affair with my B-17. And there's just something about it, you know, it's metal, but there's something. It was a time in my life where I met my husband, or it wasn't my husband, we were just friends then. We would love to dance, and we just became real good friends. So it was the love of my job, my dancing, a new man in my life, you know. So that was a nice time in my life, real nice time in my life. And I got a good man, thank God. Just before the war was over, we got married. And we were married almost 70 years before he passed away.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's
you know,
amazing.
a lot of days I wanted to kill him, you know, things like that.
That's fair.
But I'm sure he
It's a
felt
balance. It's a
about me.
balance.
Yeah.
Wow,
But
that's amazing.
it is. I said, and you know, my children are in their 70s now. They, my son's 74, my daughter's 76. So,
Wow.
and I've got great grandchildren now. So I've had a very rewarding life. Nothing. I'm not materialistic. It isn't the things that you can hold in your hands that count. I've got so many of challenge coins and things like that. I've got so much stuff that people have sent me, but they aren't the things that they're valuable, but they aren't the things that you remember. You remember the people that you've dealt with. This is so nice.
I always say, I have a saying when I'm tattooing my clients, it's a journey. Life is a journey. It's not about the things you get, the money, anything. It's the memories you make and with the people you love and what you can do in this world to make it just a little bit better. Even if it's not, your reach can't go very far, you can do what you can in your area and you create a spark.
Every
You
little
know?
thing adds to something big. I always refer to, it's funny, I've always used this example. I said, because when we grew up during the Great Depression, it was very difficult for the kids to get equipment or things to. I always said it's like the boys wanting to build a treehouse. First of all, they got to figure out where to get the wood because that's not easy to come by back then. Then they got to get the nails and the hammer,
Yeah.
and then they get us all together. Now they've got to engineer this job, so they got to figure out how to build it. Well, after they get all built, it's not near as much fun to play in it was to create it.
It's
And I
super
think
dangerous
that's like
usually
our
too.
life, you know, that's our life. Creating what's fun.
So Eugene asked, "Did you meet your husband working on the boomers?"
We no, he was in the Navy. He'd been stationed up. Are you familiar with when the during World War when before it started, the Japanese were building airfields up in the Aleutians and Kodiak, up in Bering Sea. Well, he was stationed up there for I guess 10 months. He was with the Navy. He was on an aircraft tender, and it was so funny because it was so cold and bitter up there. I could never get him to go on a cruise. He said, once you've been spend that much time up there in the cold weather, you don't want to go on a cruise. But we met, he was back in Seattle. He was stationed a couple of places in Seattle. And we used to go dancing every night. Not we'd meet. He was on one end. We 16 miles between us. He was in the Naval Air Station, and I was down by Boeing. And we would meet and go dancing almost every night. Up and by the time weekend come, we'd sleep all weekend. I mean, most of us girls who went dancing all the time. And you know, they used to take us someplace. They take us like to different Fort Lewis, I think it was outside of. Once in a while, they'd take some of us out there where wasn't as popular as in Seattle, the city. But no, we just had a really good time. And we were married just 8 days after Roosevelt died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we had a
Wow.
nice life, a good life. You know, all the ups and downs that go with a long marriage or life.
Well, I think that's definitely a testament. Most people, they don't think of long-term marriages in over maybe even 25 years, much less 50. So 70, I mean, that's amazing. So I do have a question
Well,
from
you know, Brandy, when you're saying that, don't forget that before the war, we women were meant to make beds and do dishes and what have you. There was no thought of a role or career for a woman. She was there. I said it be used. That's the wrong word, but so it was the one story I love to tell, and this is so true. When we were young, just this time last year, I was asked to speak at the Philadelphia Police program, and he just asked me to say a few words. And the commissioner of police from the city of Philadelphia is a woman. Now, who we in our wildest dreams would ever imagine that a woman at our day would be allowed to be a policewoman? And she's not only a commissioner of one of the largest cities in the country, she's also a lady of color. So, boy, if that's not for equality, I don't know what is. I was just tickled to death about that.
So that's funny that you say that, because the person that asked the question, she actually is Women's HERStory herself. She's the first African American command chief female in the Air Force of a major command, the Air Mobility Command. Her name is Shalina Fry. She's an amazing former guest of ours as well. She asks, did you ever feel you had to prove your talents as a woman? And if so, how?
My God, when I was out in Salt Lake City, there's so many people were talking to me afterwards, and this lady come up to me. I called her little old lady. My son said, "Mom, you're a little old lady." But it was so funny because I didn't get much time. They were closing. She said, "Had it not been for you women, I wouldn't be a general in the Air Force." And she started to tell me her story. I just wished so much that I would have been able to hear the rest of her story. But that makes us so proud. We aren't we helped open the doors. We didn't do it all. There's just that we had so many with the background, and there's so many of us left over to help promote all of this. And I just think it's great. We don't let up now. We realize that, like when I went to Pearl Harbor for the 80th celebration in December last year, the young man I was asked to be on John Dickerson program when over in Hawaii, and the young man that was setting it up, he says to me, he was the nicest young guy. He called me a few times because we set it up here before we went to Pearl Harbor. And he says, I said, well, you're a smart young man. And he says, my wife is much smarter than I am. And I said, yeah, but what if the two of you use your brains not against each other, but with each other? Imagine what you've got going there. But so many of them seem to be jealous of each other, and they butt heads, and that's sad.
Yep, it's all about compromise.
I often wonder how many of the men in Washington have a smarter wife that makes him who he is, but she just sits back and has to keep her mouth shut,
It's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women are starting to see, women step up and not be the quiet one in the corner. We're breaking out of those traditional roles and taking on, more and more, just to show the next generations that we can do it. We don't need to sit back and be silent. And I wanted to bring up a story my grandfather told me. So I come from a long line of military family, and my grandfather was a chief warrant officer in the Navy. And he told me that, he was on the board to, pass a vote to allow women on the carriers. And so way back whenever they were allowing women on the ships, on the Navy ships, that he was on the board to vote for that, and that paved the way. My mother's a retired chief from the Navy as well. And so I come from a long line of military. And when I joined, I was 17. It was 2001, right before 9/11. She told me, she guided me, you're going to do great. This is the job you're going to love to do. I was an imagery analyst in Intel. And, we go overseas, went to Afghanistan, Iraq. And, they're like, oh, women are not, in combat. Women aren't over there. I'm like, yes, we are. We're there doing jobs. We might not be on the ground, but we are helping. Everyone is connected.
Every job needs to be filled. That's like the rats and the waves during our time. I mean, they did the clerical job so the men could go fight, So it's important. It is important. Like I tell them so many times, the people who say to me, yeah, people Rosie, but were Rosies, they said, well, I wasn't a Rosie. And I said, well, why weren't you? Why do you consider yourself not a Rosie? She said, well, she only made the parts, like I worked the B-17s and B-29s where we actually put the big bombers together.
You're still part of it.
Still counts.
She probably made the electrical system. She made the tires. She made so many parts of that plane. I said, You're just important. You that plane couldn't have got off the ground if it had rivets.
Exactly. You're
Just
still
because it had
valid.
rivets in it doesn't make it a flying. She just didn't realize that. One lady says to me, "I wasn't a Rosie." She said, "All I did was make anchor chains for the Navy." I said, "Well, how could the Navy function without anchor chains?" She just didn't think. She thought Rosie the Riveter, if they didn't put rivets in an airplane, they weren't a Rosie. How wrong they were.
I think that, they think it's because if I didn't do that specific job, I can't say I'm a Rosie. But any woman, I think, who served or even helped in any kind of way with
Right.
military, you're still a Rosie, and so many people, so many women, use that iconography of Rosie the Riveter in
Right.
everything. I literally, my aunt went to San Diego and bought me back an apron, and it's got like, a woman doing this,
Yeah,
so
we can do
we can
it.
do it. It doesn't have to be specific to that. It's, it's
I
an
think it's
idea, a
opening up.
movement.
I think it's getting better. I met a
Oh, it
lady
is.
from Vermont, and she didn't know till her son lives in this area, and he must have through me. I guess he met me somewhere, uh, and he wrote to her and told her that she was a Rosie, and she said she didn't think she was. All she did during the war was work for this colonel in New York City, and they supplied all these parts and things for Republic Airline. I said, "My God, your job was just as important as any of ours." But she
Yep.
didn't think that because she didn't put rivets or weld on the ship, she wasn't Rosie.
And I think that really much actually very much translates over for women veterans too, because a lot of women veterans feel that they're not veterans because they didn't serve during a combat time or they didn't deploy. And it's like, well, I'm not a veteran. No, you raised your right hand. You stepped up when others did not. And at the end of the day, you are absolutely a veteran. I have
Right.
events where elderly veterans they say, I'm not the younger generation. I didn't deploy. I can go home. And I said, no, ma'am, we're happy to have you because at the end of the day, you served, you are our sister. And, it very much sounds like it's something that was a stigma that, I think women faced where they had to like prove that they were enough. And unfortunately, it's something that, I think still happens today. Like people assume that Rosie, was perfect and, she did everything girly and, nothing different. And that's not true at all.
Well, the girls in the Air Force, when I always speak when I come to one of these fairs, not a lot, but, there's many of us telling our stories. But the girls have told me, they said, "You think that chauvinism is gone?" She said, "It's still there in the military." She says,
Mhm.
"We still got to fight for rights, but they still tend to look to women like, what are you doing in here? This is a man's job." A man's got the physical strength. That doesn't mean he has the brains. I mean,
Fair.
how many men do you know that you can do the most simple thing and he can't figure it out? I mean, we do. A woman can hold three jobs. A man holds one as a general rule. And I mean, I go on.
I forgot you were
Okay, you can go off on a
I'm
tangent. It's
laughing.
okay.
Try not to laugh. It's hard.
That was funny one day.
That's
My
cute.
children are pretty liberal children. My husband was too, but we still came from the old school where I knew, don't push too much because I knew where my line was. But one day, my son gave me a plaque that said "male chauvinist pig," and one day I called him in the male chauvinist pig, and he says, "Who raised me?" So I said, "Uh oh, I guess I'm to blame for this."
That sounds like it
They're
might
not.
be
They're
me.
not really. I mean, they're good, real good like that. People say to me, "What your children say about where you're going?" And I say, they reach the stage, they say, "Where the hell's our mother going now?" You know?
I
But
feel like that's my daughter with my adventures lately. Like her teacher didn't believe that she was in a video with a famous recording artist, and I had to explain to the teacher, no, she really was. And, and then she had met you, and I was like, well, she really did meet Rosie, and this is why. And so my daughter, like, she teases me about Mark Coleman, who is a UFC Hall of Famer all the time, and she's sick. She doesn't realize, this isn't normal for someone, like her age, and that's not normal for her mom. But either way, it's fine. What was it like using the ration card? Because I know I had to use the ration card in England, and Shalina's gonna laugh. So in England, like they think we're all cowboys, but it's very expensive with whiskey, cigarettes, and gas. So we really had to use ration cards, like the little books to
mhm.
open. So I mean, what was it like using ration cards during
Well,
World War II?
well, from I'm talking from my mother's point of view. Uh, she did a lot of baking and cooking. Of course, we didn't have the sweets like they have today, but she had to be very careful about how she used her sugar, how she used her flour. I don't know the flour, so sugar was very, coffee was very, they used chicory in the coffee. I didn't like it all. Things like that, you just learn to conserve, and you learned how to live with what you had instead of like today, if you want something, you just whip out your credit card and go get it. That was the way of life then. I mean, we had to really want, and we didn't buy anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. Of course, that was the Great Depression. We were lucky to have food on the table or a roof over our head. The stories I like to tell is we were in a small town, a very small town, and we were between two big cities. And we had what they call a coal depot there at the time. The trains were run by coal and water. And by the time they got to our little town, they had to stop for coal and water. Well, the men on these trains that were train hoppers, they called them bums or hobos, but so many of them were just professional men looking for work. They would travel. And they'd come off that train and they'd come to the door, knock on the door and ask, of course, they always asked if they could do something to earn a sandwich or something to eat. And I can remember my mother always making them an egg sandwich. We always had chickens. And I can remember how much they appreciate it. They'd sit on the step and eat that sandwich. And then usually they get back on the same train. But we didn't fear them. I mean, they were just average people. Nowadays, if they talk bums or hobos, you run for cover. But not in that
I
time.
can't run. Look like kind of like a weird, awkward T-Rex if I try to do it. It's
But
awkward.
I thought that was so nice because that was our way of life. We just looked out for each other. If somebody didn't have a roof over their head, somebody would take them in. If they didn't have food, somebody would feed them. But then that was really, really difficult times because it was the Dust Bowl up on top of the Depression. So the food, you couldn't raise the food, nothing would grow. Government killed the cattle because nothing would grow, things like that. So
Yeah. I think a lot of us, like, we read about World War II in the history books, but there's so much that we don't think about, like small things, just about everyday life, unless you read a lot of books about life during that time. For me, like I was a child in Germany. I was actually in West Germany when the Berlin Wall fell. So for me, history was very important, especially in Germany. The history they very much still teach World
yeah,
War II history there because it's not something that they're hiding. It's something that they're like, this happened, this will never happen again, but this is here as a testament to this. And you can see it all over, like in Germany. All the major cities are on very large hills because they built over the rubble, quite literally. So like there are these massive hills, and you wouldn't know why. Or if you look at very old churches like in Cologne, you will see, like, the Allied and the Axis, like they used it as target practice. So that was, and they have like a half a mile high spires, and the church held. That's the crazy thing. They have glass from like the Disney King. They call him King Ludwig, the Mad King. But it's pretty interesting how history is still very much a part of that. So Daniel asks, did you know the model that was used for the iconic Rosie poster?
did I know her?
Yes.
No, the first one was Doyle. She wasn't a Rosie. She was just like that was Norman Rockwell's. But the second one, Miller made that. He was from Westinghouse. Uh, but the woman that claims for now, I mean, that's kind of thing. Now this is. I hope we're not spread too far. I won't say this. I just don't know. She didn't claim to be the model until everybody was dead that could disclaim it. Now, whether she was or wasn't, she's made Rosie's a poster the most popular of all. So whether she was, I said, why didn't I think of that?
It's all about publicity, right?
Yeah, but no, that's not a nice thing to say. But being a real Rosie, you often question these things. Why didn't it come up? Well, people, were alive to say it was or it wasn't. But she must have proved that she was. But we always have doubts when something like this comes up. But like I said, everything, something good comes out of it and something bad comes out of it. Whatever took place, it's made that poster really popular and it's good. And once the commercials get in on something like that, and it goes crazy because if they can make money, our world's made up today. If they can make money on it, they take advantage of it. We can't use that on the back of our Congressional Gold Medal coin. We can't use that Rosie Medal because it's a trademark
Copywritten.
copyright. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
wow. Someone
So
holds
they
the
let-
copyright and it's not you ladies.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
We all agree
Yep.
on the front. I think we want to make sure all, Caucasians, colored Spanish, we want to make sure all of them are represented. But on the back, they pretty much used what I wanted for the back. It was nice. The ordinance had made it during the war. And I guess they had to get permission to do it, but we changed it around a bit. But I like that one. I like that.
I definitely learned about copyrights last summer. That's frustrating. And people can really totally copyright your image. It's
Oh, yeah.
uncomfortable. Did not know that was a thing. It totally is, unfortunately. And it's horrifying.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yes, check your
Well, there's
copyrights, people.
There's always people out there that want to. When my mask first went viral, there's a company in Chicago who started making my Rosie masks and some for 15, using my name too, and used $15 a piece where I was making them for nothing. I mean, right away they started stealing.
Take it to
On our
record.
Rosie, luckily for us,
What?
on our Rosie the Riveter, we had a lady attorney. Boy, she took that off there overnight. She went right after him. Thank God for that.
That's great.
There's a Rosie the attorney. I'm so excited.
Yes.
I want to see this.
Let me
Cecilia,
tell
make it happen.
We're going to do it.
I want to see Rosie the attorney in the courtroom. There's like a picture of her eating a sandwich, but instead it should be her on the phone.
Yes. I wonder if that image itself
Does
is
that bother the phone
copywritten.
ringing?
Like that position is copywritten.
I thought I shut it off. It'll be over in a second.
That's fine. You can mute
That's so
yourself.
cute.
That's my great granddaughter. She usually travels with me, and now
She's a part of the podcast.
she can't go with me now. I've got another lady that's been traveling with me. But
That's amazing.
it's so nice wherever we go. We meet the nicest people. General General Goldfein of the Air Force. I've met him a few times, and he's given me a challenge coin. But his wife was the one that gave me my 93rd birthday party in the Pentagon.
Well,
Wow.
That was so nice.
you got to party in the Pentagon. We
Yeah,
both were serving in the military.
No.
Neither of us got to do that. I'm just gonna point that out.
That was nice.
Maybe we will when we grow
I got
up. We'll
a
be
nice
just like
picture
May.
of it too. And the generals that was showing me around, she became in charge of the, the transportation for the Air Force. And I said, oh my guys, I said, how nice. You know what? Doesn't matter what the rank is. If they're nice people, they're nice people. And of course, like I said, I don't know whether they're private or general. I never look at their stripes.
You don't need to, ma'am. You're a national treasure.
So I did have a quick question. I don't know if you answered it before I got on, but so, we know what you did when you went to work for, doing all the things for riveting and stuff. What was it? What was my question here? So when you went there, were you considered part of like military efforts, or
No,
were you still treated like a civilian or like a military member?
we were just dumb kids out of school.
Oh,
We decided school was out in May.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, by definition, that would be me too. I was
My
17
recruiter
out of
told us.
school.
It was
Dumb
cute
kids.
because it was school was out and we'd made our mind. My girls' friends' father was out there, housing. It was hard to get housing at that time. They were trying to, so many people coming in to work in all these factories. So he was waiting for, I guess it was like a housing, a row home, like with the military bases.
Mm-hmm.
I know, her mother couldn't go out yet. So we thought, well, let's go to Seattle for the summer. That ought to be a lark. We have a good time. So we did, but we loved it. And we all stayed, all three of us became Rosies. Now, my girlfriend, we stayed in touch all these. She just died last year, but we stayed in touch all these years. But she married not too long. She met one of the engineers there and married. But my sister and I stayed Rosies through the whole war. So
Wow.
it was nice. I mean, we just did a very good job. We were very dedicated to what we were doing. I mean, there was no foolishness. We knew how important it was. At first, we thought it was a lark, but then as you realize what you're doing and what you're doing it for, it changes your whole thinking. I worked with, I'm trying to think what they are, Gold Star moms. Now, their mother who lost the son. And they stayed right working. They didn't quit because they lost the son. They said, I don't want another mother to lose a son because he doesn't have the equipment he needs. And of course, that was true with the widows, too. We knew a lot of widows that lost their husbands. That was sad. you know. But that's
Mhm.
what they call dedication, and that's what they did. That's what we all did.
Did you guys all have to like bunk like in the same place? Like, did they have you guys like out at locations,
Like
or did
living
you just come to
together?
work every day, basically like a normal job?
But what we did actually, you mean, is that like riveting?
Like, how did you get to work? Like, did
Oh,
you basically stay
that
on a
was
in
funny
a
because
station?
we lived in the Georgetown section, which was down near the Boeing plant on the south side of Seattle. And by the time the buses would get there, they'd be so packed. They had pushers, what they called pushers. They just pushed. A lot of buses would go by because they couldn't carry anymore, but they push you on the bus. And one day the bus went by, and it was so funny because the man had his hand out the door with the lunchbox. He couldn't even get his lunchbox in. You have to have that, the rubber things at the close the doors. It wasn't hurt.
Wow.
Hey,
Yeah.
it's Handers lunch. You guys got to make a choice.
Yep. Got to work.
Hopefully, it's one of those old school steel lunch boxes. Those things probably could have taken that door on.
You know, my dad still has one of
But,
those
that's
old
funny.
school lunchboxes.
Isn't it funny the things you remember? This is what 80 some years, and they said I still remember that so well. Little things you remember. People would ask me when I first started going out talking. They'd ask me different things like, "Did you wear a badge?" And I thought, I don't remember. Yeah, I knew. Then I realized that if you didn't have your badge, then you had to go to a special office and get a temporary because you couldn't get in without it. But one day I kept my check stub, and one day I looked at my check stub, had everything on it, even my full social security number. And I said, I
Wow.
had my department, my badge number, my wage, and my hours, everything.
Wow.
It's like seeing like
That's
those old school
ComSec
pictures of us.
now.
Like
Yeah,
it's just like us seeing pictures of us like downraiser in the field or like doing exercises, and we look and we're like, "Yep, that was me."
yeah.
Yep. You get like those memories back, seeing those pictures, and you're like, "Oop, that was illegal," or "I shouldn't have done that."
That was funny because I made 92 cents an hour at Boeing just before the war was
92
over. Norman and I
cents.
got married.
Wow.
What was
And,
standard for a male though? Like doing
but,
the same job, what was the actual hour? Like
but
wait.
we worked 8 hours a day mostly. But we would work if they need, we'd work Saturday and Sunday if they need. Or I remember working Thanksgiving Day, and of course that was unheard of at that time. It just depended on production, what they needed or what we needed to get out. I had the best time in Pittsburgh just recently. They invited us there. Had several programs, but the one was he's got quite a program there for veterans in Pittsburgh, and he was interviewing the different ones, and I got to meet a man that was a tail gunner on a B-17. And when my turn came to talk, I told him, I said, when we made these B-17s, when we moved them out on the tarmac, they were perfect. I said, you were the guys that wrecked them. And he just got the biggest kick out of that. And of course, we made friends, new friends.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was actually stationed near an actual like installation that was used during World War II. It's RAF Feltwell. It was also next to like near RAF Croughton and RAF Mildenhall. And it's pretty wild. The stories that they would tell. They actually would say that the ALS was haunted by like one of the pilots. Actually, so they actually would like had his whole like his uniform and everything there. It was pretty interesting nod to history. What would you say? What would you say to a woman maybe who doubts herself? Because I know a lot of it's hard to be different, right? And for you, I mean, you excel in this, but I know some people, we doubt ourselves. We don't know, if what we're doing, if going out of the norm is something that's right for us. What would you say to a woman that would doubt herself for being different?
And I was so young and I was carefree. It was hard for me to describe that time of my life because, like I said, I was there to learn. I mean, we learned, we become very good riveters. But as far as I don't know how to answer that. Like I said, oh, I was the, I was a good riveter, a very good riveter. I didn't need a lot of help, I don't think. When you first come in, as a general rule, when you're young as I was, they put you with an older woman. And it's so funny because that doesn't mean they're the best riveters. They're slower. Some of them are so much slower. Now I'm a fast mover, and it's very hard for somebody like me. So of course I got my riveting. That your buckers when you start, and of course I moved up to my riveting to become a riveter right away. Not long after that, I forget just how long. But when you become a riveter, now you're working on the outside of the plane instead of the buckers on the inside, and you're making more money. And of course, you feel better about yourself naturally. But I worked with a man from Iowa. I'll never forget that because at times he was a really good riveter. At times when they'd need a riveter experience more than anything else, but he'd ask me to go with him. And we went out on the airfield a couple of times where they were remodeling the president's planes. And they would ask us to come. He'd always ask me to go with him because, we worked well together. And I can remember that was such a boring job because we'd have to wait for the engineers to decide how they wanted to modify the plane. And then we'd have to wait for the part to be made. And by the time we got all that, it'd take us a few minutes to attach it. And now there's so much waiting time, and I'm not patient when it comes to that. I want to be busy.
Hurry up and wait.
She's the grandmother of hurry up and wait. Oh, I knew it. It came from somewhere.
Did I answer your question?
That's where it came from.
My mind is going like this.
Let me ask Cecilia as well, because Cecilia, her bread and butter is transformation of the physical form, both mental and physical, especially. Her artwork is amazing. She's done some phenomenal tours, especially with her ad council that she's done recently, and as well as what she's done with museums and really showing women it's okay to be different. What would you say advice-wise to a woman who maybe doubts herself and wants to be different, especially as a veteran?
Are you asking me or
yes,
her?
You.
Me.
Are you asking me?
No, I'm not Cecilia. I'm going to ask Cecilia.
Yeah, you're probably got the same answers I have. Doesn't matter. You go for it, whether you're man, woman, child, or whatever. Go for it. If this is what when we were born, we were blessed with different talents. People would say to me, "You're so talented," when I do my craft shows. And I said, "Well, you have talent too." She said, "Oh, I have none." I said, "Can you bake?" And she said, "Oh, I can bake." I said, "I can't bake. I'm not a good baker at all." So she just didn't realize that we all have our own talents. So you could say the same thing, right? If you've got something, use it. Don't let it go to waste. Don't let that old rocking chair get you. That's what I always say.
Yeah, and I give kind of similar advice to a lot of people when I got out of the military and I pursued a lot of different careers art wise. I had a lot of naysayers like, "Oh, you can't do that. What are you going to do?" And I kind of got to the point where I had no other choice but to pursue what I love. And
Right.
I've gone to the bottom. I've been to war. I've had lots of experiences. So a lot of times people are scared. People are scared to take a chance on themselves. And, I'm here to be that little light and be like, you know what? Who cares what anybody else thinks?
Right.
They're not living your life. You're living your life. And you are the creator of your own destiny, and everybody's different. And so don't compare yourself to anybody else.
They value the money too much too. They've got to work for money, not for what they love.
Yep. And that's, my daughter and my son, they're 18 and 17 years old, and my daughter's in college now. And I said, look, don't chase something that you think you're just going to get a high paycheck because you're going to be miserable. I said, you want to do therapy, you want to do art, you want to do whatever, do something you're passionate about, because no matter what, that money's going to follow you.
Right.
And I'm a true testament to that. And I tell everybody that if you're really passionate, you put your love and your heart and soul into it, the universe, God, whatever, is going to provide back for you because you're putting that out there. You're like a magnet. So, who cares what anybody else thinks? And I think with this generation now, they have so many resources. They have so many, we've been able to pave the way for them. And so I'm very happy about that, to do my small part, because it's gonna cause a whole domino effect. And we're already changing the world slowly but surely. And it's women like you, May, that paved the way for us. And you're exactly what I want to be when I grow up. I'll tell you that.
They still ask me, do I know what I want to do when I grow up? And I said, I haven't decided yet.
Oh, I know that definitely we have to check out one tank range now, a drive tank. So you have an open invitation, May. They're happy to take you on a ride through an exotic game ranch on any tank of your choice. So you've got 14 to choose from.
Oh, wow.
It's so funny. I've reached the stage where I want somebody to make the decisions for me. Like when I was invited, the Greatest Generation invited me to go to England and come back on the Queen Mary. Did I tell you that?
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
No, you haven't. So what are you doing now on the Queen Mary?
Well, and I said, I wouldn't go without somebody going with me because my hearing's getting bad. And, when I go into these airports and all, I don't not necessarily hear it, but it's confusing to me. It used to be I just hop on a plane and go, but now as I'm getting older, you lose your confidence. And I said I wouldn't go without somebody going with me, and they debated about that for a while. They come back and they did agree to it, but I'm at that age where I have a choice now, and I think it's a smart thing to do because who knows at this age, like they asked me to do things. Well, like you talked to me about March. I said, I worry about next week at this age, not next March. But this is what you have to do. But no, I like what I do and I keep doing it. Today I just got a nice program. I like when I can work with the women and children. Sometimes like this, just the beginning of this year, I had a program. It was quite a distance from me, and I thought, why did I agree to that? It's so far, and I knew it wasn't going to be a big one, but the small ones sometimes are more enjoyable than the large ones because you can communicate with the people. I went to that program,
Yes.
one of the best ones I ever did. So you don't know. You just gotta go out there and hope for the best. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody that if they'll just open up, that's the thing, getting them to open up and ask you questions, and then they'll tell you what's going on in their lives, what their fathers did, what their grandfathers did. Interesting.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah. So, what was it like when you got home after the war? Like when you weren't working on
Oh, that was
B-17s
going to be
anymore?
my question. Like, what
Yeah,
did you do after?
but that's interesting because when Norm and I were married just before the war was over, so he was transferred to a naval air station in Pasco, Washington, which is they had an Army engineer base there, and I went to work for the Army engineers. It was only for a few months before the war was over, but they had a compound on the base with the Italian prisoners of war, and I got to work with Italian prisoners of war. That was so enjoyable because, they were nice. They couldn't speak English very well. Some could, but they would come in and help us. Everything. Now we were working with the engineers, so they were sending equipment overseas to redo the bridges and what have you that we bombed out, that kind of type of thing. So they'd come and they'd lift the crates and do different things with us for us. And I think we paid them 80 cents a day for cigarettes, maybe shaving cream. Now, what a way of life! How nice we treated our prisoners of war compared to what they were. And to this day, I wish that I would have kept in touch with them to find out where they went, when they went home, things like that, because they wanted to get home to their families just like we did. It was just they were no different than we were. But anyway, when the war was over, my husband was he had a lot of time, and so they went by points, and so he was discharged pretty soon, right after the war. And he had worked for Westinghouse in Trenton before the war. They were very good to their enlisted men. And so he had a job to come home to. But after the war, now the unions were getting into the Westinghouse, General Motors, General Electric, all these companies. Now the communists were moving in now, trying to disrupt the union, different things like this. So we had a lot of strikes. Even though he had a job, it was harder after the war than it was, well, I shouldn't say before the war, it was harder, but it was very difficult. Now we had small children, and we'd go sometimes months on strikes, and you can't, he spent most of his life at Westinghouse, so it wasn't easy to get a job when there wasn't jobs available to start with because all the men were coming home, taking their jobs back or getting new ones. Most of the women just went back in the house or in the home, but it wasn't a time when women were able to get jobs when the men needed them. So that was the way it was when the war was over. Uh, like I said, it wasn't easy. But when the Korean War came along, now my children were still small, but I went to work riveting during the Korean War for a while.
Mm,
We built it was
wow.
so funny because I built a little tail. I think it was the F4. I forget. It was a fighter jet. And after building those huge bombers, this little tail didn't look like anything. But it wasn't a matter. I wasn't flying the flag then. I was doing simply because we needed the money. You know, we thought once World War II was over, that was the end. But then it wasn't long for Korean War came along. So
Wow.
I'm still not over the fact that the prisoners of war were paid 18 cents less than
I think
women.
it's 80 cents a day. I think
Yeah,
that
but
and
you,
sometimes they go back to at noontime. They go back to their compound, which is right behind the factory. And
that's like prison.
they bring us
You
back
said,
some of the
but you
stuff
said
that
women were paid 98 cents a day, so that's almost the same.
well,
No, I thought she said
I'm not-
92 cents an hour.
yeah, I'm not exactly
Oh,
sure.
an hour. Okay, it was an hour. Okay,
Yeah,
like,
oh, yeah. Oh, no, it was a day. No, it was a day.
Oh, it was a day. Oh my God.
yeah.
Because we were only paid 83 cents an hour at the I still have my paperwork from that. I was paid 83 cents an hour with the Army
83
Engineers.
cents an hour.
What was an average guy paid? Do you know?
Well, men got more. I understand the shipyards, the women got the same as men. I don't know that that's true or not, but that wasn't the case with the aircraft. Men got quite a bit more. I forget just what the balance was. But we did the same job. In fact, the women, some of us were better than the men because we were more agile. You had the smaller rivets, and we could move faster.
Her little fingers.
Yeah.
So, Cecilia, you missed it. May actually they challenged her to rivet again, and well, no, he was right when you came on.
I did hear it. I wasn't live yet, but I was listening.
What was
I think that's amazing.
What was
Do
that?
your hands hurt now?
No, not at all.
My hands hurt all the time.
Well,
I was like, what are you gonna do in 97? Cecilia, can you
I don't
see
know.
tattoo?
it's not
I'm gonna
near-
have a bionic arm.
typists. Remember, they get carpal tunnel, the typists, so it's not as bad as the.
I have it really
we
bad.
do a roll, then it wasn't like we just went boom, boom, boom like the typists do.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing.
Every job has its ups and downs, there's a reason. I always think I worked with an engineer for years, and he used to say to me, May, there's nothing perfect. He said, no matter how good something is, there's always something there that is not perfect. He said, so it's just what you learn to live with. It was cute because he was very active in the. Are you waiting for time now?
Nope. Honestly,
okay.
we are on your time.
Oh,
I wouldn't care if we were 3 hours. I got to talk to Rosie for 3 hours.
Yep.
Like,
I'm good.
goals.
This is funny because I was just very active with my letter writing, stuff like that. I wasn't out promoting or doing anything. He asked me to. He was very active in the New Jersey electrical workers, the engineers group, and he every once in a while he'd ask me to get a speaker for him. He said, "May go get a strong woman that can stand up in front of the stodgy old engineers and tell them what women can do." Well, the first one I called now, and I got a woman. She handled them pretty well. Second time, we think was a year or so later, I got 3 young people from Drexel Engineering School in Philadelphia, 2 men and 1 young girl. That young woman told me that when they spoke in front of that group, every question was directed to the 2 men, and she said she'd graduated higher than they had in class, and yet every question was directed to the 2 men. So we still there was still a time where they got to open their eyes. What do we have?
With any kind of job, we still have that, and even in my field now as hairstylist I used to do, and then like as a tattooer, you get the same stigma. But I've noticed across different social media platforms everywhere. I mean, it's shifting. It really is to where it's more equality for everybody, but not just women and men. It's everybody.
Well, even the young ones in Washington, the old ones, they used to sit there and go to sleep. Now they're people have gotten wild up right now, but I mean, it's just not fair because they still want. You've got to go with the change. You can't just. But I don't want them to change our constitution, things like that. I mean, I know there needs to be changes, but how they do it or what they do, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know that.
That's a whole nother
I just
right there.
I look at these men, some of these men in Washington, I thought, my God, how could a woman do worse than what they're doing? I mean, the women are more organized. I just admire these women in Washington. When we got so many in last election, I just stood up and cheered. I loved when I seen where they were, the inauguration was all a group of women, all new,
It's
Absolutely.
I was definitely honored to go on presidential candidate Joe Jorgensen's podcast earlier this year, and it was amazing the response they had with women in like the political arena that were veterans. They actually were having to turn women away because so many women wanted to appear on the Ladies for Liberty event. And I was like, I could go home. Like, no, you stay there. I was like, oh no, okay. But really, like, I mean, women really are starting to advocate but we need so much more women out there.
We
Like,
do.
there's not nearly enough of us out there
Well,
doing it.
they had all kinds of names for women. I always remember Melissa Fenwick. She was the first one from New Jersey. This has been many years ago. And something came up in Washington, and a man turned to her and he said, "I always thought of women as being in the home and sweet and smelly and ladylike." She turned to him and she says, "I always thought that about men too. I hope you haven't been as disappointed as I've been."
Yes, the sass. I
I know.
love the sass.
But women has to work so much harder. And it isn't fair. It really isn't fair at all. I think that I don't really remember the incident on the steps of the Capitol when is there Cortez, the young girl from New York? I think that's her name, Cortez. When the two representatives or senators, whoever they were on the steps walking up the Capitol. And they started really, really lighting into her, calling her nasty names. They didn't realize that there was a newspaper reporter there taking it all in. And boy, oh boy, they heard about it. But what do they do about it? They don't do anything about it. They get away with what they want. But
Well, that's why we advocate, and we're good in numbers. And I think women in general, we've come a very long way, but there's still places that women don't
oh
have
yeah,
those rights. Like, I mean, there's a competitor for like rock climbing, and she wasn't wearing
yeah.
her hijab, and she's going to be jailed, I believe, because she was not wearing it when she was competing.
Well, she's
And she
out
was
now, isn't she? Didn't they
not,
just release her?
I'm not sure. I haven't read the
Oh,
article today, but I know that she had just competed over the weekend, and they were basically stating
oh,
that
that's what I seen her
yeah, because
doing. That's why I
the hijab
thought,
cut him off. Yeah, they said that she was going to jail. So I mean, we as Americans, we really didn't always realize the freedoms that we do have. And to be quite honest, women like not in all places they have the same rights that we do. And I mean, even though we have much further to go,
right.
there are some places that women have far less.
Well, when Obama gave his State of the Union speech, he said we're 90% there. I wrote to him and I said, we're not 90% there. I said, the women have worked, what, 70, 80 years to get to we're lucky for 80%. I said, it's going to take us another 70 or 80 years to get that other 10%. He wrote back the nicest letter to me. He says to me about he hoped his two daughters, he named them by name, didn't, get this treatment. And he told me about his mother-in-law working as how she helped him in the Capitol, taking care of the girls. Well, it was just a nice letter. It wasn't like a stamp, I thought that was really unusual because I got a response from Trump and I got one from, oh, I love that, but no, I'm told not to get into. Uh, but I really worked.
Okay.
I really worked for Hillary, and of course Biden was out there really promoting Hillary too. And he's very active. He really likes the Rosies. He's been out to California and he's invited that group to the White House, and he's absolutely been wonderful. This is before he was president, and he's been absolutely with the women, with the Rosies. He understands all about him, and he knows about it. So I think that's nice, real nice.
I think that would be amazing just to like go and see your scrapbook of letters from presidents, or just
Uh,
over the years, because I
oh,
bet
yeah,
it's just like an amazing time capsule.
well, I've lived through 17 now.
Wow.
President Roosevelt was 4. He was in his fourth
Wow.
term, don't forget.
Did you,
And
did
they
you
always
know
asked me, who did I like best or what do I like best about the presidents? And I said, well,
I
you
wanted
like
to ask.
something good and something bad about everyone. I mean, it isn't as if you can, put a stamp on them. I said, but the most fun we had was when Kennedy was running. We just had such a good time. It didn't matter whether we're Democrat or Republican. We would just laugh and joke and cut each other up. It was nothing mean or hateful. And that was a good time. That was a real good time. I wish we could get back to that again. But now here's another case where he was a real old, he was the engineer on the job. He's a real old gentleman, very gentleman. He used to say to me, May, what is it with you women and that Kennedy? He said, I hear you all day and I go home and I hear my wife and my daughter. And he was a staunch Republican. And the day after the election, he come out in the parking lot to meet me. He said, May, you'll never guess who I voted for. I said, Kennedy? He said, yes. He said, you must have something the way you women.
That
you, have,
charisma.
you have influence over other people.
He knows what he had influence over so many.
I
But
know.
my grandmother is actually his first cousin, and they did not get along. So like she passed. Like if you wanted to get her upset, you would bring up JFK and she would get so upset. I was like, I don't know what happened, but man, she would just get all fired up, and she was a very prim and proper lady. So to see her get upset,
Well, we all have a right to believe what we think, but I just think what's happened this last, I'm going to say 4 or 6 years, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I just can't understand it because, like I said, we loved our country. When we were kids, we helped build the South Dakota, the memorial, the faces, the Washington faces. We saved pennies and helped build that, things like that. You know, we cared about our country. We didn't have 2 cents to rub together, but yet if we had a penny, and same way with bonds. When we were kids, we used to get they had 10 cents, they had books, and if you get a dime, you could get a stamp, just like the food stamps that we're familiar with. Then you put that in the book, and when you got 1875, you turn it in for a savings bond. And it was a way of getting our country, protecting our country, and taking care of our country.
Yeah.
That's what we thought. I mean, I guess maybe we were naive or dumb. I don't know, really. But I like that way of life. I really like that way of life. It isn't what you have. I often think how we didn't have anything during the Great Depression, but I don't remember an unhappy moment in my life. And my father was a great storyteller, and that was our entertainment at nighttime. My mother would be so busy trying to figure out what to feed us, and he would be telling stories. Great storyteller.
So I'm gonna go ahead and close up a little bit tonight. I know we ran a little over, but I do not mind in any way, shape, or form. We could have been here.
That's women when they get good on a good subject.
That is okay.
It's my show. I get to do what I want, so we get to as long as we want.
The podcast I listen to.
Whoever's trying to shut them up, they better be strong.
Oh no, ma'am. We're loving hearing every word that you have to say.
I did have a quick question before you end things. I did see that there's a Rosie the Riveter Association. Are you a part of that as well, May?
Yes, I belong. Yes, but usually
I'm gonna join. I definitely want to join. Do you have to be an original?
No. The daughters of the Rosies are called rosebuds. The men are called rivets. And because the ones that are running it now, the girls up in are you familiar with Willow Run up in Detroit or Ypsilanti, Michigan?
I'm not, but that's okay. I can research it.
They got a group up there. They're just fantastic, and they're all they're young Rosies. They're rosebuds that are running that, because we're getting too old to do the things that we used to do. And it's just absolutely fabulous that they're taking over and keeping our legacy alive. I just love that.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that and join that.
Their convention is going to be in June in Portland this year. So if anywhere near Portland. But no, they'd be happy to have you as a member.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So May, I actually, so that sticker for our podcast, Miss Cecilia designed that sticker, that holographic one with the woman saluting.
Say that again.
Miss Cecilia was the one who actually designed that beautiful sticker that we
sent.
Oh,
you did?
I did. I used there's a famous basically portrait of the first military woman. So I kind of use that as an inspiration, and I've gotten lots of requests to make it more versatile, more skin tones,
Yeah.
So I do plan on making more merch for everybody.
That's why I asked Brandy. Her voice seems to, with my hearing aids, some sounds come through better, and her voice comes through clearer for me with my hearing aids.
Mine does?
That's why I have a hard time traveling, because if I get where there's too much commotion, I can't hear. I want somebody with me so they can tell me what they said.
Yeah, well, you should have that use your military voice.
My military voice? Am I being loud and clear?
We still have a lot more to be said, don't we, ladies?
We definitely do. We're going to have to make like a part 2 of this.
Yeah. This might go into a book. People ask me, am I going to write a book? And I said, I'm too busy doing it.
Let's do an audio book. You just talk.
I know. Everybody's writing a book. So I've got nothing to prove.
Well, now you're on a podcast. So
that's right. That's
new times.
That's a new thing. I was scared, man. Yeah, I was scared to come on because I think you're going to think, I don't know how to get on. And
no, if anything, I had problems getting on. You guys had it way before me.
Are they telling us to get off?
No.
Oh yeah, no, trust me. There's been people that have not even been able to figure out how to click on the link,
Yeah,
and
I
it was
have
refreshing.
problems.
No,
I'm
no, no,
pretty
no.
tech
That this time
savvy.
it was my fault, but no, that time it was not that was his fault. But
Well,
no,
a few weeks ago we had a one with the Mint, and it was oh God, Microsoft something, Microsoft Team. And I said, I'm not even going to try that one because it was
it's
where
like
there was so
Zoom.
many on. I said to the lady out in California, if they need to know anything, you can speak for me. So I guess she did.
That's so awesome. I really enjoyed this so far. It's just been
I
great.
did too. I did Brandy. I did something. I've been talked to Brandy a few times, and she's so easy to talk to.
Oh yeah. We're just here chatting. Don't worry
Yeah,
about you don't have to be
we
nervous
just
about
have a job
anything.
to do, right? We have a job to do, and we're going to do it no matter what.
Yes,
Well,
ma'am.
like I said, I was married almost 70 years. I did all this up until my husband died. I didn't go out because he'd been ailing, not bad, but enough where I stayed home and took care of him. That was a woman's role, which I didn't never mind to miss. I'm very thankful that I was able to do it because I had a good man. I said, when I go out talking, I say to men, I'm not man bashing because I have had all good men in my life, from my grandfather right down to my great grandchildren, to great great grandsons. I said so, but I want equality, and until we get equality, I'm not going to rest. They should put that on my gravestone, I guess. Oh, I guess they're going to scatter me to the winds. They'll say, I said, scatter take me up in an airplane, scatter me, and they'll say, there goes May. You know how she loved to travel.
Yes.
Well, I think that you traveling at 97 and doing all of what you're doing, I mean, you made 7,000 masks. I think I might be 97 when I made that many masks. From now.
My grandchildren said that to me when I was out there, just about a month, yeah, roughly a month ago. They live out south of Harrisburg. They said, Grandma, do you realize you've been over both oceans in less than 6 months? I said, really? Yeah,
Wow.
I was over Pearl Harbor for the 80th celebration back in Netherlands in June, May. And then now I'm going again. And I've been 3 invites back to Normandy. So, and in fact, the Historical Society from Pearl Harbor, 3 people called me and asked me to come back again this year. And I told them I'd already had to committed to the one in Tampa for that time. So,
If you ever need an escort, let us know.
want to go
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
travel with me? We'll show them what women can do, right?
Oh yeah.
Don't threaten me with a good time, eh? So Shalina says, thank you so much for paving a prosperous road for all women to travel. God bless you. This woman is also Women's HERStory, and I think that is amazing that she said that because I agree with her wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Brandy. And thank you, Cecilia.
Yes, thank you, May.
So so I did win. I drew our winner for our pens, and it is Lord Grimm. So he has some pretty sweet one of a kind pens. So I'll definitely have to send that his way. That's kind of funny that he won it tonight with you on.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have a very angry Greek guy calling me after this. And he'll live. But he gets all kinds of cool stuff. But no, at the end of the day, I mean, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your insight. Did you have any maybe closing thoughts that you may want to convey?
Not really, other than just keep going, just do what we're doing, and we're gaining ground every day, and they'll find out we can do it, right? We can
Yes,
do it.
we can do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
We did it before, and we can do it again.
We'll continue to do so as needed.
Right.
We'll pick up the torch and keep it going.
That's it.
Yes.
I hate to see, hate to have to go through all these different wars, but it seems to be inevitable in new generations. So we'll just we'll pick it up, pass it on. Just keep.
That's all we can do. Set a good example. I hate when in Washington when they stand up there, play God, and then we find out they got a girl on the side and she's having a baby or something like that. I hate that when they pretend that there's somebody and they're not.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be ourselves. That's what I say when they ask me. I said, "What you see is what you get," because I only know my own story, You know, I tell my life story. That's all I do.
To be fair, May, me being my authentic self got me in a lot of trouble, and now I'm an official disturber of the peace because of it. Because I said I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna be a show pony and be perfect. Now I'm gonna
No.
do what I want to do, and I got in a lot of trouble. And
Oh well,
that's what I was disgraced, actually, quite literally. So
you can handle it. Just think
Well,
you
you
can
know
do
what?
it.
You find your tribe. You find the right people.
I know.
Not everyone's gonna
Oh no.
take you for what you
Oh
are,
no.
and
And I
because you
still have
make them
people
feel
say, "Hey,
uncomfortable.
who's Rosie?" You know, that kind of thing. What do you do? No, when we were in Netherlands, they put me right up front with the veterans. I never, used to get that before. I just built airplanes. I wasn't in the trenches. But now they're treating me like I was, they couldn't have won the war without us, which they couldn't have
kind
done.
of.
Took them a long
Still
time to open
valid.
their
It's
eyes.
still
Yeah,
valid. We're all connected,
yeah.
like links. If one rivet's gone, like
That's what,
that can
The
do
tail end might come off. Like,
everything.
really,
Yeah.
yeah,
that's
we can do
important.
it.
I've gone to enough in-flight emergencies to tell you that any little
Yeah.
part or pigeon can actually very much impact how that aircraft flies. So, absolutely, and what you did was absolutely crucial, and it's definitely something that you quite literally molded HERStory just by stepping up during a very crucial time. And I think it's amazing that we get to hear from you because I think a lot of people tend to rewrite history and omit details, that it's okay to be your authentic self. You don't have to be perfect. The Rosies, they weren't perfect, but they were the best at what they could be at the time that they needed to be there. And it's okay to be a trailblazer. It's okay to be a lone wolf if you need to be, and I think that quite literally you guys stand for that. And I think that it's great that the Rosies are still so active. That's what I can't get over is, I mean, you are quite literally are more active than most veteran advocates are. And you are 97 years young, ma'am. So, I mean, for you, like, to be doing that now, I mean, most people would say, "Look, I'm going to take it easy and I'm in my retirement. I did enough." But for you, you're continuing to push on. And I mean, you inspire me. I know you very much inspire Cecilia as well as many other women
But
and men
who's
in
but,
general.
but Brandy, who sets a better example than you?
But I am the example of what not to do. Like,
But look at what you've done. Look what you've
Give yourself
sacrificed
more
for our
credit,
country.
Brandy. I'm
Yeah,
telling you. You
I
have
think that,
something
yeah.
great, and what you're with your podcast, and we've had this discussion before. You have. I need to tell you this. One of my clients, who's retired Navy as well, or Army, no Army. I apologize. Told me about your podcast without knowing that I've been on it and that I've worked with you. She literally told me. Hopefully, she tuned in today, but
I love it.
she goes, "Yeah, there's this podcast called Yes, I Am the Veteran Podcast." And I said, "I know what that is. I've been on it." So I'm
I've
telling
seen
you, people are aware, and you are pushing out topics that are uncomfortable but need to be talked about. So thank you for having this, because without this, we wouldn't hear her story. You wouldn't hear my story. We wouldn't be affecting
And
other vets
forget,
as
I'm,
well.
I'm only just one of many. I mean,
Yep.
and they all have stories to tell. They all did the same thing or is equal to what I did to save the war. I'm just a little more vocal and healthy.
Well, you quite literally push to have the actual National Rosary Day. I mean, like there's literally a day in the year that you push to have pass because you were so active. And
Right.
like, this was only like a few years ago. Like you were in your 90s when this happened.
No.
Well, you knew what was so interesting is when Senator Casey, now we got the House vote, right? Very easy. We got 300 and some. We only needed 60 some for the Senate, but we were just stuck in the Senate. I don't know why. And so when Senator Casey moved it from the House to, I forget where he moved the bill, and then he put it before the Senate, it was on C SPAN. And I got to watch it. And he had me on there with him, showing me making masks, and told all about me. That was such a nice honor. Who in my wildest dreams, if I could just tell my mother and father what I've done, I mean, they'd be so proud because my mother was a strong woman, a good worker. But like I said, the woman's place was in the home back there. The men were to be seen. I mean, the women were to be seen, heard, that kind of thing. And I just think now they'd be proud because I'm a combination of both of them, and I feel that I've made my footprints, for them as much as, and it wasn't easy, but what is easy? I mean, I did it because that's what I love to do, and I felt it was a job that had to be done. I didn't know where I was going when I started 40 years ago. I just thought this isn't fair, and I'd write to anybody and everybody who would listen to me. And I just lucked out when the paper picked up on it, and I got some beautiful responses.
Well,
That's
I think that's
great.
amazing. And you were telling me like that no one really was listening to you guys until what, like the 2000, like the early 2000s? I mean,
Hmm.
so very until very recently, like no one really wanted to hear what they had to say. And so I'm thankful that, you're being recognized in your lifetime where you're able to see, their how they feel about things. But I know that we've kept you on too long, May. I'm very sorry that it's so late where you are. Thank you so much for coming on, and I absolutely can't wait for you to come on again. Absolutely. I can't wait to see you in March or whenever we do crazy stuff together, but it's happening. But I'm excited, and we'll definitely have to make sure Cecilia is there.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll do something.
But absolutely, definitely tune in next week, guys. We are flying Maggie to Florida. We've been working on this Project X. I can't wait to unveil it next week.
Where are you
Um,
going to Jacksonville?
no, we're gonna be going to see. Remember, I was telling you about that show, Ink Master.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, remember? Yeah, that nice boy, Chris Plinceton. Yes.
Because it's through
So
Daddy Flint that we met, right?
yeah, yeah. Well,
Uh,
he's gonna be tattooing young Daniel. Yes. But yeah, so he's going to be tattooing Miss Maggie, and so she's very excited because she's been waiting 3 years after she had her leg amputated. So she's very, very excited. She is very much looking forward to it, and I'm excited that I can get her there. And we've actually even had people reach out from like a private jet airline or something.
oh, that's
Geez.
right.
So I'm gonna reach out to them on that. So I
Are
can't wait to
you
see where that goes.
going live on a podcast with that?
I think I might pop up live while we're
Okay.
there. I
Well,
know May definitely wants to talk to her while she's getting tattooed and say hi to Chris, I think, or to via Zoom.
Well,
Cool.
I do it from the woman's point of view too. So the men are in the trenches. They're the ones that get injured. They're the ones that fight the battles, like you too, Brandy. But they don't realize what a woman goes through at home. I'm using my granddaughter as a good example. She's going to meet me. She lives in St. Augustine, but she's going to come over to Tampa when I'm at that program with be just be together. But when her husband was over in Djibouti, now he's a trainer. He was on a naval scholarship. He's a doctor now, but he was still training then. And our own bomber dropped a bomb on the helicopter and blew the helicopter captain. Everybody up blew his leg off. Well, what she went through here, not knowing what was going on. She had two small children. They don't realize what happens to the wife when these things happen too, or
Yeah.
your partner. I mean, they don't know that background. I want my granddaughter, if they'll allow it, to just stand up and just tell them what happened to her, because I can't explain it. And then all the years or months in Walter Reed afterwards.
Yep.
I mean, they've got to realize what a woman goes through too. So, I mean, a lot of men don't realize that, I don't think, what the wife's role is.
Well, I mean, even for me, like when I was air like it was a lot for my spouse. Like, and he was a man, and for him, it's hard to be caregiver for somebody because they don't train you to be caregiver. They definitely don't train them how to deal with PTSD and recognizing it in their partner, de-escalating techniques, dealing with chronic anxiety, any sort of mental illness that they may have because of like what they've survived. They don't teach their caregivers this, and it's very overwhelming for someone to deal with that much anger because they're in that much pain. Because
Right.
I know I lashed out. I was on maximum amounts of morphine, Percocet, methadone, and gabapentin, and I'm still in agony. And I know I was a bear to deal with at times, and it was very difficult
Did you
to
say you
learn
were
to
married
manage.
at that time?
I was married at that time, and it was
Was
very
he a good
difficult.
supporter of yours? Did he support?
Um, if you mean my supporter, he put my wheelchair through the car wash because he wanted to. So if that gives you any idea.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
What?
It needed to be washed.
But having a good partner is so important. I mean, you know yourself, the mental problems you go through, the things that you go through. You know, I didn't experience, but I've seen what my granddaughter experienced. I mean, you don't live,
Yeah.
you can't walk in their shoes.
Yeah.
There's no way you can walk in your
Hard.
shoes. But
That's
the
definitely shifting too, you know,
uh,
marriage from what I've seen with my great grandparents, my parents. It's definitely the roles are different. You know, my parents divorced when I was young. Everyone's military. My mom joined, you know, as a single mom, and she worked her way, and then my stepfather was also military, dual military. You know, so like the dynamics are changing, and it's more of a team effort now. And I feel like, you know, you took part of that because women started going to work during
right.
those times, and it's shifted, and now it's becoming a better place, just slowly but
And
surely, and doing what we can.
you know what I like now? I watch my grandchildren and my great grandchildren. Their spouses help in most cases. They help them. They share their load.
You're a
Whereas in my
team.
day, a woman took care of the house and everything. It was her responsibility, and they just didn't give a thought to it. I often thought when I went to work, now my children were getting along in size or in age, and I get my husband up, make sure he had his breakfast, his lunch, his clean clothes. He went off to work. Then I get the kids up and do the same with them.
Mm-hmm.
When it come my turn to go to
So
get
work.
cleaned up and go, who the hell cared whether I got off to work or not? I remember one night I come home and my son met me at the door and he says, "Where's my baseball uniform?" I said, "Well, where the hell how do I know? I don't wear it. You know, you
Where'd
just
you
get,
put it?
after a while, you get some, you know, they expect you to do and be everything. But they learn, you know, you've
Oh,
got,
they will.
Yeah.
and it's our fault if we don't make them learn. I know it took me a long time to make my husband realize that, you know, we're in this together.
Yes.
It's not your role or my role, it's our role, you know.
Absolutely. And it just like, I mean, we're very strong in numbers and, you know, people banding together rather than just going for their own individual needs. Like, I mean, really, like, we should, like, the PACT Act really should show us as veterans what we as a group are capable of.
Right,
And women, imagine if a bunch of women veterans banded together and really fought for things that could actively affect change for veteran healthcare, for homeless women veterans, for, you know, MST sufferers, you know, or for even just claiming life insurance for malpractice, you know, things like that, like things we wouldn't think of, you know, maybe we, you know, need to band in numbers and go there and get these things addressed. Like when I was on People for Liberty, they were floored because I was bringing up things they'd never thought of, like they never mentioned on
Different
like a political
perspectives.
podcast. And I was like, why are we not having a childcare credit when we can do all these other credits for expenses? If it's the era of COVID and I have to actually put my child in daycare, I should be able to be compensated for that. And on top of that, why are there no VSOs on Saturdays for women that are or people that are working that have children so they can go in on a day they have off and they can appeal their own claim? 90 to 100%, that's $1,000 difference. That's rent for somebody. That could prevent someone from being homeless if they had an address. They could they file for their own claim and have these things. And there's so much that we as women need to do for the women veteran community. So I absolutely am thankful that you could come on, you know, and help us light that torch a little bit even higher. Because at the end of the day, you know, women veterans, like we have a lot of change. And I mean, with Vanessa Guillen and going to DC and passing the Guillen Act, like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, yes, that's happening, but we need to do so much more.
And we need people behind us, we need groups. You don't do any of these things by yourself, no matter how hard you work.
Takes a village too.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Team,
Everybody
village
wants to stand up
support.
and take claim for different things, and it's no one person that does it. It's
Yeah.
getting the right ears sure helps. You know, getting somebody to listen.
Yeah.
That's important.
And that's the hardest thing is like getting someone to listen to you and take you seriously, especially as a woman veteran. Like, first of all, you get the whole you're a veteran, which is the whole like name of the podcast where it came from because it's so frustrating and it happens so much because you have to, there's a stigma, you have to look a certain way to be perceived as a woman veteran.
Mhm.
And it's even worse if you want to be a woman veteran advocate, then you have to be a semi-professional perfect show pony, you know, to be
No.
taken seriously. And that's not fair
Yeah,
because it's
no.
like, you know, as a normal person that's a veteran in crisis, they may be thinking, well, I don't fit in any of these boxes. So, there's no one that I could look up to, or be like, or not even that, or I could be different because they were different, and at the end of the day, pushing and being different or against the grain, it should be accepted rather than, poo pooed or, pushed away or given pushback by other women. We need to be working as a community to build each other up rather than tear each other down.
But you are a hard role to look up to. Average women like me don't have any idea what you have gone through. I mean, the years of not physically as well as just mentally what you've gone through, let alone physically. And I don't think the average person like myself, and I know I'm probably a lot more broad-minded about most everything than the average woman my age. But no, you are
You
to
are
be
anything
admired.
but average, May. You
Correct.
are. That
I
is
don't
not
know about
even.
that. I don't know about
No,
that.
You're a national treasure,
I'm
ma'am.
not even going to let you say you're an average woman
Like,
because you
what
are
I
an above average woman.
what I say is what you see is what you get. I mean, people say to me, "Well, you could tell them anything," and I said, "Why would I want to tell them anything? I'm here to tell my life story if that's what they want to hear, you know." And
That is
it's
a
something
lost art. A person like
I
you is.
wouldn't want to tell you what I call some of them, but that wouldn't be
Yes.
Oh, May, yes.
like. I think we better. Are you waiting to end it?
Oh yeah, we're just about to end, but I'm just enjoying talking to you.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
I own the platform. I can do what I want.
Together with something in common.
And you touched on mental health. It's your generations and older generations too never really talked about mental health, and that's something that is definitely, I'm a huge mental health advocate. I suffer from PTSD myself and depression, anxiety, and those kind of things. And like Brandy was saying too, we don't fit a mold. But you know what? With what I do as a tattoo artist, and this is why I'm also, the ad council kind of picked me, because I have been in that position. I'm not perfect. I have made mistakes, but I'm here to tell you that you can build yourself back up. We're here to offer resources. Um, just to quickly brief on that, the VA has a lot more resources now, and that's who that ad council was for. It's for the veteran crisis.
Well, you can see an injury, but you can't see that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's the va.gov/reach has a lot of resources, not just the VA, but nonprofits in people's areas. So that's something, when you talk about mental health, our generations now are starting to take that a little bit more serious. COVID helped kind of bust that right out the window because we needed mental health. Everybody needed help. And, when we get out of the military, or even we're working in stressful environments, nobody wants to talk about that because everyone wants to be this picture perfect thing, but we're not. So letting people know and using our voice to say, hey, you're not alone. We are here, and there are resources, and we might not be doctors or anything like that, but we're a safe space. And that's kind of what I like to portray. And I talk about Brandy's podcast all the time. And now I've been talking about you, May, talking you up. And, it's very helpful when we can all come together and go, hey, it's okay not to be okay. And we're here to talk, and you don't have to be alone. We got to band together in any way that we can and help each other. And I think we're doing that.
We're all weird here.
In Vietnam with Agent Orange, look how long before they recognized that and realized what it was doing.
There's, I know the claims, the VA claims have definitely recognized that.
Yes.
It's getting better. There are some things that we still need to help vets with, getting disability for the right things. And
we try to help them before they get to where you hear the husbands come home and after a while they kill their wife, or they don't admit that they got a problem.
And but the thing is,
realize
too,
don't even know how bad their problem is.
Yeah. A lot of times too, people know they're aware, or they're not paired up with the right therapist, or maybe they're not ready to own up to their traumas. There's a lot of factors when it comes to that.
Well, a lot of them won't open up either, will they? A lot of them won't talk.
Well, I think that's also why I try to do what I do, and that's why I'm working with the ad council too. It's to open up that conversation. A lot of times,
I remember my brother was in Leyte Island, which is one of the Philippine islands, and they used to have the kamikaze, the planes.
My family is from the Philippines. I'm a quarter Filipino. That's how I came to the States, basically.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
one time we got a couple drinks in him, and that's when he says, "You've never lived till you see one of those kamikaze planes coming at your ship." Sometimes having a drink or two in them opens them up, and they'll start to talk. But we never knew that before.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I remember reading about like Patton was very much, he didn't believe like so much PTSD was a thing. Like he called it, was it like battle sickness back then? And they would literally go into the bays and they would be laid up and they would say, put that one on the front lines, put this one on the front lines, because PTSD was not understood back then, when people did not understand like the toll it really took on people. And I think Cecilia being able to put everything to the forefront, where it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be a cookie cutter cutout veteran, to be accepted, in this like sphere. And I think that you having that spot with the ad council and talking about your story and why you doing what you're doing, it really, I think, would bring women to come out more and just like not self-identify, but just reach out to other sister veterans. Like there's been so many times women veterans have come to me and said, I've not been around another veteran that's a woman for 12 years. I was, assaulted during my service, and I was ashamed of being a veteran. And they don't identify. They've never claimed a benefit. Nothing.
Is that why they won't open up and talk? They don't feel like they're macho or what is it? I don't think there's a mother alive that raised a family that couldn't say they could use a psychiatrist sometimes. I mean, you need to talk sometimes when those problems are overwhelming, even if they're simple ones. And imagine what you guys go through with when they're really deep seated.
Yeah, we're learning a lot more too with science and mental health. I mean, times are changing when it comes to understanding our brains. About 100 years ago, I mean, they were doing lobotomies, and it's not like, I mean, they probably still do them now, but we know a lot more about our brains
really
now.
Limited, yeah.
Wouldn't you like to see Einstein's brain?
Yeah, they really do have it. He donated it to science. It's in the Mutter Museum. We didn't go in Philly,
so
Cecilia.
Cool.
Why did we not go to that museum in Philly, though?
It
was down the street from where we were.
I know.
Next time, if there's a next time.
Is everyone individual? Are they all totally different?
Yeah, well, it's a whole museum. Yeah, it's like a whole museum. It started as a science museum, the Mutter Museum, and then it became like a museum of oddities. So presidents, and like tumors that are there.
Yeah.
They have like all different like skeletons and things like that.
Is that the museum of? That's not the Museum of Death, is it? Not that one.
No, it's that right. Like I think it's next to it, but no, this is.
I know that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're learning so much more about trauma and our brains and the way it affects our DNA, how it changes our way of thinking. So it's getting a lot better with neuroscience and stuff like that. So we're getting there. It just, I can only imagine what you've lived through and to see the changes.
We had nothing like we learned nothing about psychology as kids growing up. There was nothing around in that type of thinking. And after World War II, we had adult classes where you could go take almost anything, like automobile repair, speech, anything. I would take like a great books or movie study, and I started taking psychology courses, mostly because I learned so much about myself.
That's why a lot of people get into it. I was studying art therapy as well.
A simple applied psychology course. It's amazing what I learned. And you know what I learned? The most important lesson I learned? I thought my husband was different. I found out he was a man.
Disappointment.
That we all have common, issues. Yeah, we're all human. It's
but
not even.
And when she said, we learned what we were ashamed if we didn't. We started looking outside of the housework and what have you. And a nice thing that you learn is be yourself, and and don't try to change somebody else. And I think that's the best thing I ever learned. Don't try to change him. He's a man. He's going to be that way no matter what. Here's a good one. But like I said, we think different. Men and women think different.
Well, the goal is hopefully you find them at a trainable age. You learn too many bad habits anyway. That's my whole thoughts on things. But Cecilia touched on something really great. So va.gov/reach. You said that if veterans go there, it's for the national mental health crisis. Is that right?
Well, the ad council paired up with the VA, the Veteran Crisis Prevention I guess, chapter, or I'm not sure what their entity is called, but it's basically the VA. And they came up with this campaign, I believe, last year. So I just happened to be the first female and tattoo artist that they contacted. They have a few other artists, and those are slowly being leaked out. I didn't even know it was released yesterday until one of my old coworkers posted it. Him and his wife tagged me, and I said, "Oh, it's out." So, but it's basically there to open up that conversation. A lot of they did a focus group with Facebook employees who are veterans. They're like, "How do you deal with mental health?" And they said, "Well, we go get tattooed. That's our therapy." So they found me somehow, and I'm so honored to be a part of it. And it's all if I can reach one person, that makes me so happy.
Do you ever get one that maybe you're a little scared or fear?
What do you mean? Do I get what?
When you talk to somebody, you deal with them, right? The veterans, and when you get one that opens up, sometimes you feel a fear that they're
no,
not at all.
No, I don't know what it is, but I usually when I tattoo somebody or a client comes to me, we always have a consultation ahead of time, and we'll chit chat a little bit about what they're wanting. Now, when these people start opening up about things, they know they're in a safe environment. I never get scared or anything like that because I've been in their shoes. I can relate to it. So if it ever gets to the point where I feel, when you say if I'm scared, you mean like if they have like a flashback or something and they become violent?
Right.
Is that what you're thinking?
Threatening or something.
I've unfortunately been in situations where I've been around someone who has been triggered, has had a PTSD episode. I myself have had a PTSD episode last year, and I know what that's like to kind of lose control. And so a lot of us, who have triggers are very aware of them, but sometimes it does happen.
Yep.
Now with me, because I am relatable and I can understand, I have an extreme empathy. And so I can sense if something's getting a little too much. I kind of know how to redirect the conversation or maybe take a moment and kind of backtrack. And if it's something that really is making them emotional or they need some help, a lot of times I'll say, hey, I understand. And I give them resources, local resources of therapists, of other things. So they have tools.
You gain their confidence. Is that what
I
you're
do?
saying?
I do gain a confidence. And
Well, you know what? A lot of times too, they can trust you more than they can trust their wife, because in a fit of anger, a wife might throw that back at him, and that's the worst thing that could happen. But we're human.
Well, I've had some of my clients now. I've tattooed many spouses and couples who are dual military, or one's military and one isn't. I've had some clients that the wife will contact me and say, hey, can you just maybe talk to him, have a consultation, maybe see where his head's at, because he won't, and I'm like, sure. Or I'll give, if I'm not the person, I know another male veteran who can maybe give a little bit more advice that I can't give. So if I don't feel comfortable, then maybe I can't reach a certain person. I'm part of the Operation Tattooing Freedom. I've got a whole team of people, and we've done that. We've all come together. We're like, hey, they've contacted me. There's a girl. She needs to talk to somebody, and you're who I want to talk to. So, I mean, I do the same thing. Hey, I got a gentleman here, needs to talk to somebody right now. So we've created a network, and if that comes across in my field, that's what I do.
When you get cases like that, do you live it yourself? I mean, do you take it home at night and you think about it? Are you turned it off?
I have to. I have my own little ritual of doing things because I am highly empathic. I in the morning kind of do a little meditation thing. My studio is very private, and so when I go in the mornings, I mist my plants, I light my sage, and like I kind of meditate. And
you get together.
I have to, because I feel everything. I can feel their emotions.
Which are fortunate, you can turn it off.
It's not just talking. Yeah. So when I go home, as I'm tearing down my station and turning everything off, I will blow out a candle and go, okay, thank you for this energy. Thank you for their trust. And I kind of just, I give it back out to the universe. And I hope that I just send healing lights as you know, that as
That's
weird as
what
that sounds, that's what I
I
have
don't
to
think
do.
I could do that.
I
It
don't
is
think it's
hard. It does.
hard
It's
though.
very taxing on me, especially when I have clients who have either passed away from something or there's a sensitive circumstance where I'm doing a tattoo, and I don't want to get too serious, but you know, I like dealing with memorial tattoos because I understand, and it can be very hard sometimes because people leave our lives in sometimes abrupt ways, and there's no other. Sometimes I have to cry it out. I have to cry it out with my clients. I have to cry it out when I come home, or sometimes I just sit outside and I have to. I do feel those things, and it can take a toll. But that's why I only do like 1 to 2 tattoos a day, for my own mental health as well. But I do little rituals where I kind of release that, so I don't hold on to it.
How do you handle that, Brandy?
Well, first off, Cecilia's been quite modest. She's got like a year wait list, though. Might I add. So, like, yes, she only sees 1 or 2 a day. However, there's a
That's also
long
because my
line.
hands hurt.
There's a long line. Just saying. But I'm saying, but either way, for me, like, I mean, there have, I mean, I've had veterans that have been fully triggered. But I was a medic. I was very much trained to work in emergent medicine, and it's hard sometimes because when people are very much triggered, like over the summer, there was a 101st gentleman who was fully triggered, and he went to town on himself with an ice pick
Mm,
and the vehicle, and it looked like a crazy like panther got a hold of his car, and
wow.
the police had to be involved, and it was an entire mess, and it was mishandled by the people that should have been taking care of the veteran. So I was quite frustrated because the veteran was very much troubled, and I had a machine, an alpha stimulator, which is a mood enhancer, which you give to veterans. That's what the VA prescribes. It's a alternative medicine I've written about that helps veterans with PTSD, and I immediately had him try it, and he was a different person because I saw him the next day after he was released from the hospital after his hold, and he wanted to talk to me, and we just discussed like what happened, and what he could do in the future and tools he had, and he had no idea. And that's the big reason I do this podcast, is because so many veterans have come to me after I ran for Miss Veteran America, and they said, I didn't know this. I didn't, I don't know that I don't have these resources, like, or they would say, can you help me with this? And I would realize there was a pattern of not like non-information being given out, or not enough for veterans. Like, yeah, he take this medication, that's fine, but not all medications work for veterans. And a lot of us have stomach issues now, unfortunately, due to where we were deployed, what we were exposed to, anything like that. And medication is not always the best answer for everybody. And I think that more information needs to be given on alternative medicines for veterans that exist out there now that they can explore. Because right now, like with the reports that are coming out with the 22 a day, like they're saying it's gone down, and then they did another report and it's 44 a day, which I believe is probably closer to being accurate, with opioid deaths finally being counted in the numbers, but I believe it's still a little low. But at the end of the day, like, we need to be pumping information out to the veteran community with, alternative or just treatments that are out there that help veterans. And that's why I met Cecilia with Operation Tattooing Freedom, because they do work very closely with veterans with PTSD. And that's why I'm very thankful that we're taking care of Maggie, who is one of those veterans. And at the end of the day, it's something that, a tattoo is a transformative experience. And it's not even so much that, yeah, I'm getting a free tattoo, but it's the whole experience behind it and around it, right? Like, you're getting
Yes.
tattooed by someone who truly understands what it is to go through, the hell that you've survived. At the end of the day, you are having that session. And these artists aren't just like Joe Schmo, like, like I'll drew a Snoopy and it looks cool in my mom's kitchen. Like, no, these are like the best of the best artists that are out there. And for Cecilia, her industry is very male dominated. To be a woman tattooer in general in a shop is weird. To be a phenomenal female tattooer who's an owner in a shop is almost unheard of. So for her to do what she's doing, and on top of that, consistently help veterans and get information out there, and show that it's okay to be different, have PTSD, and be successful. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what we need to show more of in the veteran community.
Well,
Like,
and a lot of times too,
that's how you
veterans just
put
don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. And
Yes.
so that's what I try to do. You know, I live in a big military town, so I try to tell my clients and friends and family, like, hey, there are resources out here. So all I can do is try to tell as many people as I can. I'm going to be putting something together on a website here soon. To where I can put local resources. And there's also Facebook groups of
Yep.
female veterans as well. There's sisters, I think it's Sisterhood Veterans or something like that I'm part of. So they're always trying to help each other. So it's there. You just got to find it. But it should be right there.
But
Yeah.
you two are unusual. I mean, you got somebody between you here that as clueless as to what you. I know I hear what you go through, but we have no
It's
idea.
similar though. It might be different, but it's the same. Just like you were saying.
I know there's a lot more clueless than me, but we don't realize that. Like I said, the depth of what you go through, we hear, but it's we just hear a small part of what you girls go through. You girls, you ladies.
Absolutely. But it's not something that you didn't hear yourself. I know it, during that time, I'm sure it just was something not talked about, especially with MST, like military sexual traumas or things along those lines. It was not something discussed at all. It was very taboo topic, and it was very much a hush hush. No one talked about it.
And that's still going on in today's military.
Unfortunately, yes.
But I have clients that are fighting it.
Well, at the end of the day, like, that's why we do these podcasts. I learn stuff on every podcast, like, no joke. Like, I learned, like, you actually have to have a good conduct discharge to claim a Camp Lejeune water claim. Like, what does punching your commander have to do with being exposed to toxic water? Because you could have done it because you were impacted by the water. And if they were to do that, then that means technically that at that point that should never have been a bad conduct discharge, because when you are court-martialed, the first thing that they do is they review your medical record. If you have anything in there that can make you medically boarded, they have to do a medical board. And if you were found to be unfit for service, then you would have an honorable discharge. That is thousands of dollars that veterans are losing that may have been impacted in this way. And it's something that needs to change. And that's why I'm very thankful that we're having Aaron Brockovich come on in a few weeks. Hopefully, in that way, we can most certainly discuss this more in depth, because it's absolutely something that needs to change. And if we're not talking about it like we are tonight, then at the end of the day, nothing is going to happen as far as facilitating change. And you're a testament to that, May.
And not only that, every program you're on, you'll pick up somebody new. Somebody will help move it for you.
Yep,
absolutely. We'll definitely strengthen numbers. To be continued. We're definitely going to do this again. It has been an absolute honor to have you on, May. And Cecilia, I love having you on always.
Oh, you've taught me a lot tonight. You're never too old. You should learn something new every day.
Always keep learning.
And I learned podcast.
Never stop fighting.
I know, this is May's first podcast at the
That's so great. I'm glad we got to be your first.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm too.
We're literally a part of HERStory. Yes, I'm excited.
We are.
People are going to be unblocking me to watch this podcast. Yes. Did my job.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for watching. It was very lengthy, but at the end of the day, I've enjoyed every second of it.
Yes.
I absolutely can't wait till you come on again. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you again, Cecilia. And
thank you.
Congratulations
Thanks for having me.
Have a good rest of the night, guys. And we will see you guys next week in Florida. Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye. Nice meeting you, Cecile.
You